If he plays one complete song, I'll give him everything." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The grand ballroom of the Manhattan Concert Hall fell silent. 2,000 eyes turned toward the stage where a man in a tattered coat stood frozen, his weathered hands trembling inches above the pristine white keys of a Steinway grand piano worth more than most houses. My prize money, my reputation, my title, everything. Vincent Blake, the most celebrated pianist of his generation, stood in his $1,000 suit arms, crossed, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. He was so certain, so absolutely convinced that the homeless man before him couldn't possibly play a single note worth hearing. But there was something in the way the man looked at that piano. Something that made a few people in the audience lean forward. Something that whispered this moment was about to change everything. The man's name was Isaiah Wright, and 3 hours ago, he had been sleeping on a cardboard box in an alley 2 blocks away, just trying to survive another cold November night in New York City. Now he stood on the most prestigious stage in America, about to prove that talent doesn't care about the clothes you wear or where you sleep at night. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back. Back 3 hours. Back to where this impossible story really began. The National Piano Championship wasn't just another competition. It was the competition. The kind of event that could launch careers, destroy reputations, and create legends. And this year, everyone knew who was going to win. Vincent Blake had been the favorite for months. At 35, he'd already won every major competition in Europe. His recordings went platinum. His concerts sold out within minutes. And tonight, in front of 2,000 of the most influential people in classical music, he was about to add the national championship to his collection of victories. The prize wasn't small either. $100,000, a recording contract with Deutsche Grammophon, and most importantly, the title that would cement his place in history. Vincent arrived at the hall in a black limousine, photographers swarming like moths to a flame. He waved, smiled, gave sound bites about his journey and his passion for the art. But anyone who knew him could see the truth. Vincent Blake didn't love music. He loved winning. He loved being the best. And he especially loved reminding everyone else that they weren't. Inside the hall, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation. Women in evening gowns, men in tuxedos, critics sharpening their pencils ready to write tomorrow's headlines. The stage was set. The Steinway grand piano gleamed under the spotlights like a jewel. Vincent was backstage warming up when someone knocked on his dressing room door. "Mr. Blake, you're on in 20 minutes. He nodded, barely acknowledging the stage manager. His mind was already on the Rachmaninoff Third Concerto he was about to perform. The most technically difficult piece in the standard repertoire. The piece that separated the masters from the pretenders. He walked toward the stage entrance, his custom Italian shoes clicking against the marble floor. And that's when he saw him. Just outside the main doors, pressed against the glass, was a man who clearly didn't belong. His coat was 3 sizes too big, held together with safety pins. His beard was wild and unkempt. His shoes were held together with duct tape, and he was staring into the hall with an expression Vincent had seen before on the faces of tourists and wannabes and people who dreamed, but never did. Vincent felt something twist in his chest. Was it pity, disgust, or something deeper? something he didn't want to name. The man's hands were pressed against the glass, and Vincent noticed they were shaking. Not from cold, from something else. Something that looked almost like hunger. Before Vincent could look away, their eyes met. For just a moment, something passed between them. The homeless man's eyes widened, and Vincent saw something there that made him uncomfortable. Recognition, maybe. Or was it something else? Something that looked almost like sadness. Vincent turned away sharply and walked back inside. He had a competition to win. He didn't have time to think about people who stood outside looking in. But as he walked toward the stage, he couldn't shake the image of those hands pressed against the glass. Hands that looked like they'd once held something precious and lost it. He pushed the thought away. Sentiment was for losers. And Vincent Blake never lost. But if Vincent had stopped, if he had asked, if he had looked just a little bit closer, he would have learned something that would have stopped him dead in his tracks. The man's name was Isaiah Wright. And 22 years ago, he had been exactly where Vincent was now. On top of the world. Destined for greatness. Called the greatest young talent America had produced in a generation. Isaiah had grown up in the south side of Chicago in a neighborhood where gunshots were more common than birdsong. His mother, Ruth Wright, worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. Cleaning offices at night, serving breakfast at a diner, doing laundry on weekends. Money was always tight. Some weeks they had to choose between electricity and food, but Ruth had a rule she never broke. No matter how hard things got, no matter how many bills piled up, she always found a way to smile. Baby, she used to say, being poor is just a situation. It ain't who you are. Isaiah was 7 when he first heard piano music. Not in a concert hall or a music school, but drifting from an open window on his walk home from school. Someone was playing Chopin, and Isaiah stopped dead on the sidewalk, transfixed. He stood there for 30 minutes, not moving, barely breathing, just listening. When his mother came looking for him, worried sick, she found him standing in front of that window with tears streaming down his face. "Mama," he whispered, "that's the most beautiful thing I ever heard." Ruth Wright was a practical woman. She knew they couldn't afford piano lessons. They could barely afford dinner. But she saw something in her son's eyes that night that she couldn't ignore. A hunger, a need, something that went deeper than want. She started saving. 50 cents here, $1 there. Tips hidden in a coffee can under the sink. For 8 months, she saved every spare penny, skipping meals, walking, instead of taking the bus, wearing the same worn-out shoes, even when the soles split open. Isaiah's 8th birthday came on a February morning so cold that frost covered the inside of their windows. He woke up expecting nothing the way he always did. Birthdays were just another day when you were poor. But when he walked into their tiny living room, he saw it. An upright piano, old, scratched with keys that stuck, and a sound that wasn't quite in tune. His mother had bought it from a church that was closing down, had somehow convinced 3 men from the neighborhood to help carry it up 4 flights of stairs. Isaiah stood there, staring, unable to speak. "Go on," his mother said softly. "It's yours." He walked forward like he was in a dream and touched a single key. The note that came out was imperfect, slightly flat, but to Isaiah, it was the voice of God. He turned to his mother, saw the exhaustion in her face, the way her hands trembled from working too hard for too long, and he understood. He understood everything she had sacrificed, everything she had given up, everything she would never have because she chose to give him this. "Mama," he said, and his voice broke. "I'll make you proud. I promise. I'll make this worth it." Ruth Wright knelt down and took her son's face in her work-roughened hands. "Baby, you already make me proud. You don't have to do nothing but be yourself." But Isaiah knew. He knew that this piano was more than just an instrument. It was his mother's hope, her dream, her bet on a better future. And he was going to honor that bet if it killed him. He taught himself to play. There was no money for lessons, so he learned from library books and by listening to music on a neighbor's radio. He practiced 6 hours a day, every day, even when his fingers bled, even when the neighbors complained about the noise. By the time he was 10, word had spread through the neighborhood about the boy with the gift. By 12, he was playing at church services. By 14, a music teacher from the Chicago Conservatory heard him play and nearly fell out of her chair. "This child," she said to Ruth, "is extraordinary. Generational. I've never seen anything like it." She offered to teach Isaiah for free. And for the next 2 years, Isaiah's talent exploded into something that could no longer be contained by the South Side of Chicago. At 16, he auditioned for Juilliard. The judges sat stone-faced through his performance of Liszt's La Campanella, one of the most difficult pieces ever written. When he finished, there was silence. Then one of the judges stood up. Then another. Then all of them. Isaiah Wright had just received a standing ovation from the toughest critics in classical music, and a full scholarship to the most prestigious music school in America. His mother cried when she got the news. Not sad tears, proud tears. The kind of tears that said every sacrifice, every skipped meal, every worn-out shoe had been worth it. "You did it, baby," she whispered, holding him tight. "You made our dream come true." But neither of them knew. Neither of them could see what was coming. The success that would turn to ashes. The dreams that would become nightmares. The moment when everything Isaiah had built would come crashing down around him like a house made of cards. Because life has a way of taking your dreams and twisting them into something you don't recognize. And Isaiah Wright was about to learn that lesson in the cruelest way possible. Juilliard was everything Isaiah had dreamed and nothing he expected. The talent was overwhelming. Every student was the best in their city, their state, their country, and Isaiah was competing with all of them. But he thrived. His professors called him a once-in-a-generation talent. By his second year, he was performing with the New York Philharmonic. By his third year, agents were calling, offering contracts, promising him the world. That's when he met Sarah. She was a violin student with auburn hair and green eyes, and a laugh that could light up the darkest room. She came from money from the kind of family that had season tickets to the Met and summer homes in the Hamptons. But she didn't care about any of that. She loved music. And she loved Isaiah. They fell hard and fast the way young people do when they think they're invincible. They got married the summer after graduation in a small ceremony with Ruth, beaming in the front row, wearing the first new dress she'd bought herself in 20 years. Life was perfect. Isaiah was 22 with a recording contract and a concert schedule that would take him around the world. Sarah was pregnant with their first child, and Ruth had finally been able to quit 2 of her 3 jobs. The American dream right there in front of them. Real, tangible, theirs. And then everything fell apart. It started with a cough. Ruth tried to hide it, but Isaiah noticed. Then came the weight loss, the fatigue, the way she had to sit down after climbing just 1 flight of stairs. "Mama, you need to see a doctor." "I'm fine, baby, just tired." But she wasn't fine. When Isaiah finally convinced her to go to the hospital, the news came back like a punch to the gut. Stage 4 lung cancer, aggressive, already spread to her lymph nodes, her liver, her bones. The doctors gave her 6 months, maybe less. How Isaiah asked, numb with shock. She never smoked. Second-hand smoke, the doctor said gently. From years of working in environments where other people smoked. It happens. All those years working in offices and diners and laundromats where the air was thick with cigarette smoke. All those years sacrificing her health so Isaiah could have his dream. The treatment was expensive. Even with insurance, the bills piled up faster than they could count. Experimental drugs, specialized care, things that insurance wouldn't cover but might buy her a few more months. Isaiah didn't hesitate. He canceled his tour. He broke his recording contract, paying the penalty fees that wiped out his savings. He took every cent he had and poured it into his mother's treatment. Sarah supported him without question. Family comes first, she said, and meant it. Their daughter Lily was born in October. Isaiah held her in the hospital, this tiny, perfect thing, and made a silent promise to be the father his own father never was. To give her everything, to never let her down. Ruth met her granddaughter once. She held Lily in her trembling arms and said, "She has your eyes, baby. Your beautiful eyes." 3 weeks later, Ruth Wright died. She was 52 years old. Isaiah played at her funeral. Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, her favorite. He got through the first movement before his hands started shaking so badly he had to stop. He sat at that piano bench and wept like a child, while 200 people watched in silence. He buried his mother on a Tuesday morning in November. And something inside him buried itself right alongside her. The medical bills didn't stop with her death. There was the funeral, the headstone, the debts that kept coming like waves. Isaiah tried to get back into music. He called his agent, tried to salvage what was left of his career. But the music world moves fast. He'd been gone for almost 2 years. There were new prodigies now. Younger, hungrier, more available. "I'm sorry, Isaiah. The offers just aren't there anymore." He took whatever work he could find, playing at weddings, bar mitzvahs, hotel lobbies, work that paid by the hour and treated musicians like background noise. Sarah kept working, kept teaching violin lessons, kept believing that things would get better, and Lily grew babbling and laughing and reaching for her father every time he walked through the door. They were poor again, but they were together. And for a while, that was enough. Then came the night that destroyed everything. Isaiah was playing at a hotel in Midtown. Just background music for a corporate event, where nobody was listening. Sarah was supposed to meet him after, and they were going to grab dinner at a cheap diner and pretend they could afford to go somewhere nicer. She was driving with 3-year-old Lily in the back seat, singing along to the radio, probably smiling that smile that Isaiah loved more than music itself. The drunk driver ran a red light at 60 miles an hour. Sarah died instantly. Lily lived for 6 hours in the pediatric ICU before her small body just couldn't fight anymore. Isaiah got the call halfway through playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow for a room full of people who weren't paying attention. He stopped playing mid-note, put his hands in his lap, and something inside him shattered so completely that it could never be put back together. At the funeral, people kept saying things like, "They're in a better place," and "God has a plan," and other hollow phrases that meant nothing. Isaiah didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just stared at the 2 caskets, one large and one impossibly, heartbreakingly small, and felt his soul crack down the middle. After everyone left, he sat in the empty church for hours, just him and the silence and the crushing weight of a world that had taken everything he loved. He thought about his mother's piano sitting in the storage unit he could no longer afford. He thought about the dreams they'd all shared, dreams that now felt like cruel jokes. And he made a decision. He would never play piano again. Music had promised him everything and delivered only ashes. It had taken his time with his mother. It had given him hope and then crushed it. It had put him on a stage while his family died. Music, he decided, was a liar, and he was done listening to its lies. He walked out of that church and didn't look back. He let the bills pile up until they came and took everything. The apartment, the furniture, even his mother's piano sold at auction to pay the debts. He had nothing left. No family, no career, no hope. Just the clothes on his back, and a heart so broken it couldn't even remember what whole felt like. Isaiah Wright, the prodigy, the scholarship kid who'd made his mother proud, became just another invisible homeless man on the streets of New York City. And for 15 years, that's exactly what he was. Invisible, forgotten, lost. Until tonight. 15 years is a long time to be invisible. Long enough to forget what your own voice sounds like. Long enough to stop thinking of yourself as a person and start thinking of yourself as a problem. Isaiah learned the rules of the street. Where to get a hot meal, which shelters were safe and which ones you avoided. How to make yourself small when the police came through. How to disappear. He slept in doorways and under bridges. He wore clothes from donation bins and ate from soup kitchens. And he tried every single day not to think about the life he used to have. But New York is a city of memories. And sometimes those memories find you, whether you want them to or not. Isaiah's spot, his regular place to sleep, was in an alley behind the Manhattan Concert Hall. He'd found it 2 years ago, drawn by something he couldn't name. It was sheltered from the wind, and the building's heating system kept it a few degrees warmer than the open street. And every night he could hear the music. The concert hall hosted performances almost every evening. Symphonies, recitals, competitions. The sound would drift out through the ventilation system, and Isaiah would lie on his cardboard bed and listen. At first it hurt. Every note was a reminder of what he'd lost. Every melody was a ghost of the life he used to live. But slowly, over months and years, something changed. The music stopped being painful and started being something else. A companion, maybe. A reminder that beauty still existed in the world, even if he couldn't touch it anymore. He learned the schedule. Tuesday nights were usually string quartets. Thursdays were piano recitals. Saturdays were the big symphony performances. And Isaiah would lie in his alley and listen and remember what it felt like to be the one creating that beauty, instead of just absorbing it. One night about 6 months ago, something shifted. It was late, past midnight. The concert had ended hours ago, and the building should have been empty. But Isaiah heard something. A single piano playing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. He sat up, listening. Whoever was playing was good, really good, the kind of good that made your chest ache. He found himself standing, walking toward the stage door before he consciously decided to move. Someone had left it propped open, probably a janitor taking a smoke break. Isaiah slipped inside. The building was dark except for the stage lights. And there on the stage, sitting at a beautiful grand piano, was a young woman. She couldn't have been more than 25, and she was crying as she played. Isaiah stood in the shadows of the wings and listened. The piece was perfect, technically flawless, but there was something in the way she played, something desperate and sad, that made it clear this wasn't practice. This was goodbye. When she finished, she sat for a long moment with her hands in her lap. Then she stood up, gathered her things, and walked off stage without looking back. Isaiah waited until her footsteps faded. Then he walked onto the stage. The piano sat there under the lights like an old friend. A Steinway Model D, the best piano in the world. The kind of instrument he used to play when people said his name with reverence instead of pity. He should have left. He should have gone back to his alley and his cardboard and his life of being invisible. But his hands were moving toward the keys. His body was sitting down on the bench. And before he could stop himself, his fingers were touching ivory. The first note rang out in the empty hall, and Isaiah felt something break open in his chest. 15 years. 15 years since he'd touched a piano. 15 years of silence and grief and trying to forget. But the moment his hands touched those keys, everything came flooding back. His mother's smile, Sarah's laugh, Lily reaching up with tiny hands saying, "Daddy music." His fingers found the notes to Moonlight Sonata, the piece he'd played at his mother's funeral, the piece he'd sworn he'd never play again. And he played. His technique was rusty. His fingers stumbled over passages he used to play in his sleep. But the emotion was there, raw, unfiltered. 15 years of grief poured into every note. He played the first movement, then the second, then the third, the powerful finale that builds and builds until it feels like the world might crack open from the sheer force of it. When he finished, he was crying. Not quiet tears, gut-wrenching sobs that shook his whole body. And he realized something. He'd been wrong. Music wasn't the enemy. Music hadn't taken his family. Life had. Random, cruel, senseless life. But music was the thing his mother had given him. The thing that connected him to everyone he'd lost. The thing that made him feel like they were still with him in some small way. He'd spent 15 years running from the one thing that could heal him. Isaiah stood up from that piano and walked back out into the night. But something had changed. Some door had opened that he couldn't close again. He started coming back. Every night after the concerts ended, he would slip inside and play. Rusty at first, but getting better. Remembering. Healing. He played for his mother. For Sarah. For Lily. For the man he used to be, and the man he might still become. And tonight, when he saw the signs for the National Piano Championship, something inside him whispered, one more time, one more chance, for them. He didn't expect to compete. He just wanted to be close to the music, to remember what it felt like to be part of something beautiful. But then Vincent Blake had seen him through the glass. And everything changed. Vincent Blake couldn't shake the image of the homeless man's face pressed against the glass. Something about it gnawed at him during his performance. He played the Rachmaninoff flawlessly, of course. The audience gave him a standing ovation. The judges looked like they were ready to hand him the trophy right then and there. But as he took his bows, as the applause washed over him, like a wave, he kept seeing those hands pressed against the glass. After his performance during the intermission, before the final results were announced, Vincent stepped outside for air. He needed to clear his head, shake off whatever was bothering him. And there he was, the homeless man, still standing there, still staring at the doors like he was trying to see through them to something on the other side. Vincent should have walked away, should have gone back inside and prepared for his victory speech. But something made him stop. "You a fan of piano?" Vincent called out. The man turned. Up close, he looked even worse than he had through the glass. His beard was gray and tangled. His eyes were hollow. But there was something in them, something that didn't match the rest of him. "I used to be," the man said quietly. His voice was rough from disuse, but educated. Articulate. The kind of voice that didn't belong to someone living on the streets. Used to be. Vincent moved closer, curious despite himself. "What happened?" "Stop appreciating good music." The man looked at him for a long moment. "I stopped playing." "You played," Vincent laughed. It came out crueler than he intended. "Right. And I used to be an astronaut." But the man didn't react to the mockery. He just kept looking at Vincent with those strange, sad eyes. "You played well tonight," the man said. "Technically perfect. Every note exactly where it should be." Vincent bristled. There was something in the way he said it, like a compliment with a barb hidden inside. But Vincent challenged. "But you don't love it. You love winning. There's a difference." The words hit Vincent like a slap. How dare this homeless nobody critique his playing, his passion, his art? "Is that right?" Vincent's voice went cold. "And you would know about loving music, you who sleeps on the street and begs for change. I know more than you think," the man said softly. And that's when Vincent lost it. Maybe it was the stress of the competition. Maybe it was the uncomfortable truth in the man's words. Maybe it was just that Vincent Blake didn't like being questioned by anyone, let alone someone who society had deemed worthless. "You know what?" Vincent raised his voice. People were starting to gather, sensing drama. "I'm tired of people like you. People who couldn't make it, who gave up, who stand on the outside and criticize those of us who actually did something with our lives." The homeless man said nothing, just stood there taking it. "You say I don't love music. Prove me wrong. Here's an offer." Vincent was fully performing now, playing to the growing crowd. "There's a piano inside. If you can play one complete piece, start to finish at a level that even approaches professional, I'll give you everything. My prize money, my trophy, my title, everything." Gasps from the crowd. Someone whispered, "Is he serious?" Vincent was on a roll, now drunk on his own magnanimity. But when you fail, when you sit down at that piano and prove to everyone that you're just another dreamer who couldn't hack it, you apologize. You apologize for wasting our time, and you never come back to this hall again. The homeless man looked at Vincent for a long, long moment. Then he looked past him through the glass doors to the stage inside where the Steinway Grand sat under the lights. "All right," he said quietly. Vincent blinked. He hadn't actually expected the man to accept. "What I'll play," the homeless man's voice was stronger now. "One piece, start to finish." The crowd erupted in excited chatter. Someone ran inside to tell the organizers. Within minutes, word had spread through the entire building. The homeless man was going to play. Vincent felt a flicker of doubt. What if the man actually could play? What if he had to give up his prize? But then he looked at the man's trembling hands, his shabby clothes, his weathered face. No, impossible. At best, the man had taken a few lessons as a kid. He'd play chopsticks or Mary Had a Little Lamb, and everyone would see Vincent's point. This was going to be the perfect ending to his perfect night. He would win the competition and prove his superiority over the dreamers and the has-beens, and the people who thought music was about love instead of excellence. "Come on then," Vincent said, gesturing toward the door like a king granting an audience. "Let's see what you've got." The homeless man walked toward the door. People parted to let him through, some curious, some disgusted, some looking at him with something like pity. Isaiah Wright walked through the doors of the Manhattan Concert Hall for the first time in 15 years. And Vincent Blake had no idea that he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. Inside the concert hall, 2,000 people watched as Isaiah Wright walked down the center aisle toward the stage. Whispers followed him like a wave. "Who is he? Why is Vincent doing this? This is cruel. No, this is entertainment." The judges looked uncomfortable. The head judge, a severe woman named Margaret Chen, stood up. "Mr. Blake, I'm not sure this is appropriate. It's his choice." Vincent cut her off, all smiles and charm. "The gentleman wants to play. Who am I to deny him his moment in the sun?" Margaret looked at Isaiah, really looked at him, saw the way his hands were shaking, the way he kept his eyes fixed on the piano like it was the only real thing in the room. "Sir," she said gently, "you don't have to do this." Isaiah stopped, looked at her, and for the first time since entering the building, he smiled. It was a small, sad smile, but it was real. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "I do." He continued walking. Each step felt like walking through water. The distance between him and the stage seemed to stretch out forever. His heart was pounding so hard he thought everyone must be able to hear it. What was he doing? He hadn't played for an audience in 15 years. His hands were rough from street life. His mind was clouded from years of grief and survival. He was going to humiliate himself in front of 2,000 people and prove Vincent Blake right. But then he thought about his mother. Sitting in that church, watching him play at 7 years old, tears streaming down her face, because she knew her son had something special. He thought about Sarah dancing in their tiny apartment while he played spinning their daughter in her arms, both of them laughing. He thought about Lily, 3 years old, climbing onto the piano bench next to him, pressing keys at random and calling it a song. And he thought about that old upright piano his mother had saved 8 months to buy, 50 cents at a time, skipped meals at a time, worn-out shoes at a time. He thought about the promise he'd made. "I'll make you proud, Mama. I'll make this worth it." He'd broken that promise 15 years ago. Maybe he couldn't fix his life. Maybe he couldn't bring back the people he loved. Maybe he would fail spectacularly in the next 10 minutes. But at least he could try. One more time. One last time. For them. Isaiah reached the stage stairs. His legs felt like lead. The piano sat there under the lights, massive and beautiful and terrifying. He climbed the stairs. 1 step, 2, 3. The stage lights were blinding. He couldn't see the audience anymore, just a sea of darkness beyond the light. Maybe that was better. Easier to pretend they weren't there. Easier to pretend it was just him and the piano, like all those nights in the empty hall. He walked to the piano bench, sat down. The leather was soft, expensive. His torn pants looked obscene against it. Up close, the piano was even more beautiful. A Steinway Model D, same as the one he'd been playing in secret, same as the ones he used to play when he was 20, and the world was full of nothing but possibility. He lifted his hands and held them over the keys. They were shaking so badly he didn't know if he could even hit the right notes. In the audience, someone coughed. Someone else laughed, quickly stifled. Vincent Blake stood in the wings, arms crossed, that same smirk on his face, waiting for the failure, anticipating the moment he could say, "I told you so," to everyone who ever doubted him. Margaret Chen, the head judge, looked like she wanted to stop this. But there were cameras rolling now. Someone had alerted the media. This was going to be news one way or another. Isaiah closed his eyes. He thought about the last time he'd played this piece. His mother's funeral. The way he'd broken down in the middle, unable to continue. He'd sworn that day he'd never play Moonlight Sonata again. It was too painful. Too raw. Too connected to everything he'd lost. But now, with his hands hovering over these keys, he realized something. The pain was the point. The grief was the point. Music wasn't supposed to make you forget. It was supposed to make you remember, to feel, to honor what you loved by letting it hurt. He opened his eyes. "This is for you, Mama," he whispered. Too quiet for anyone else to hear. For Sarah, for Lily, for every person who gave up everything so I could play. He took one deep breath. And then Isaiah Wright began to play. The first note rang out in the concert hall, and the world stopped. C sharp, soft, delicate, like a question whispered in the dark. Then the triplet pattern in the left hand. Steady, relentless, like a heartbeat, like footsteps, like a time passing whether you want it to or not. Isaiah's hands moved across the keys, and it was like 15 years fell away in an instant. The muscle memory was still there, buried under layers of grief and survival, but there, waiting, ready. The melody entered in the right hand, that famous haunting melody that everyone knows but no one can hear without feeling something deep in their chest. In the audience, the laughing stopped. People who had been scrolling on their phones looked up. Vincent Blake's smirk faltered. Because what was coming out of that piano wasn't the stumbling attempts of an amateur. It wasn't even the competent playing of a good musician. It was something else entirely. Isaiah played the opening movement of Moonlight Sonata the way Beethoven meant it to be played. Not as a showpiece, not as a demonstration of technical skill, but as a prayer. As a conversation with God about loss and longing and the unbearable weight of being human. Every note was perfect. Not mechanically perfect like Vincent's performance had been, but emotionally perfect. Each phrase shaped with such care, such intention, that it felt less like music and more like someone opening up their chest and showing you their heart. The triplets in the left hand never wavered. Steady, constant, like the love of a mother who works 3 jobs, like the faith of a wife who believes in you even when you've given up on yourself, like the trust of a child who thinks their father can do anything. The melody floated above it, fragile and beautiful, rising and falling like breath, like memory, like hope that refuses to die no matter how hard you try to kill it. Isaiah's eyes were closed. Tears ran down his face, disappearing into his beard. But his hands never stopped moving. They knew where to go. They remembered. In the audience, a woman started crying. Then another. Then a man in the 3rd row pulled out a handkerchief and pressed it to his eyes. This wasn't a performance. This was witnessing. This was watching someone pour their entire life into music and coming out the other side transformed. Margaret Chen, the head judge, sat forward in her seat. Her pen fell from her hand, forgotten. In 30 years of judging competitions, she had never heard anything like this. Because technique could be taught. Precision could be practiced. But this kind of soul-deep understanding of music, sasum, you couldn't learn that. You either had it or you didn't. And this homeless man had it in spades. The first movement built slowly, inexorably toward its conclusion. The melody climbed higher, The left hand pulsed stronger, and Isaiah's entire body swayed with the music like he and the piano were one organism breathing together. The final phrases came. Soft, again. Quiet. Resolving back to that opening question, but changed now. Not a question anymore. An acceptance. A surrender. The last note faded into silence. Isaiah's hands remained on the keys. He was breathing hard like he'd just run a marathon. His whole body was trembling. In a normal performance, there would be applause now. Polite clapping before the next movement. But no one moved. No one breathed. The silence in that hall was so complete, you could hear the ventilation system humming. Because everyone knew. Even the people who knew nothing about music knew. They had just heard something that doesn't happen often. Something real. Something true. Isaiah opened his eyes. For a moment, he seemed surprised to find himself on a stage in front of people, like he'd forgotten where he was, like he'd been somewhere else entirely. He looked down at his hands, still resting on the keys, hands that were rough and scarred and had gone 15 years without touching a piano, hands that somehow still remembered how to turn pain into beauty. He took a breath and began the second movement. If the first movement was grief, the second movement was memory. Lighter, faster, almost cheerful if you didn't listen too closely. But underneath the brightness, there was a melancholy that colored everything. Isaiah's hands danced across the keys, and the music that came out was like watching home movies of people you love who are gone. Beautiful, precious, unbearably sad, because you know how the story ends. He played, and he remembered. His mother's laugh, the way she'd hum while washing dishes, the way she'd say his name, drawing it out long and warm like a blanket. I say, ah. Sarah's smile, the way she'd lean against the doorframe and watch him practice her violin tucked under her chin playing harmony, the way she'd whisper, I love you in the dark before they fell asleep. Lily's tiny hands, the way she'd insist on playing duets with him even though she was only 3 and just mashed keys at random, the way she'd clap for herself when she finished and demand again, Daddy, again. The second movement of Moonlight Sonata is only 2.5 minutes long. A breath between the grief of the first movement and the fury of the third. A moment to remember the good times before the storm. Isaiah played it with such tenderness that it felt like watching someone handle a precious, fragile thing. Like he was afraid if he pressed the keys too hard, the memories would shatter. The melody was simple, almost naive, like a folk song or a lullaby. But the way Isaiah shaped it, the way he let some phrases linger while hurrying through others, made it feel like a conversation, like he was talking to ghosts who could only answer in music. In the audience, people had stopped trying not to cry. The woman in the front row was openly sobbing. The man next to her had his hand over his mouth. Even the critics, the jaded music journalists who'd seen everything, sat with wet eyes and stunned expressions. Vincent Blake stood in the wings, and for the first time in his life, he understood what his teacher had tried to tell him years ago. Music isn't about perfection, Vincent. It's about truth. He'd always thought that was nonsense. Music was about precision, technique, winning. But now, watching this homeless man pour his broken heart into a piano, he finally understood. He hadn't played music tonight. He'd played notes. Correct notes. Perfect notes. But just notes. This man was playing life, and loss, and love, and everything that mattered. The second movement came to its gentle conclusion. A little musical phrase that turned back on itself like looking over your shoulder one last time before walking away from something precious. Isaiah's hands lifted from the keys. He sat there for a moment, his head bowed, gathering himself. Because he knew what came next. The third movement, the one that takes everything you've been holding back and sets it free. The third movement of Moonlight Sonata is a monster. Most people who know the first movement have never heard the third. It's rarely performed because it's brutally difficult. Arpeggios that move at lightning speed, hand crossings that require perfect precision, a tempo that never lets up for 3.5 minutes of relentless driving fury. It's Beethoven's rage at going deaf, his fury at a world that would take away the one thing he loved most, his refusal to go gentle into any darkness. Isaiah's hands crashed down on the keys, and the concert hall exploded with sound. The arpeggios came like a waterfall, notes cascading over each other so fast they almost blurred together. But each one was clear, distinct, purposeful. Isaiah's fingers flew across the keys, stretching impossibly wide for the intervals, hammering the fortissimo passages with a force that made the piano strings vibrate in sympathy. This was every ounce of pain he'd carried for 15 years channeled into music. This was the fury of a man who'd lost everything and somehow survived. This was the scream he'd been holding back since the day they put his wife and daughter in the ground. The music built and built, never relenting, never giving the listener a chance to breathe. Faster, louder, more intense. Isaiah's whole body moved with the music. His back arched, his shoulders rose and fell. Sweat dripped down his face, mixing with tears. His hands were bleeding. The rough calluses from street life had split open, leaving small streaks of blood on the white keys. But he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The music demanded everything, and he was going to give it. In the audience, people sat frozen. This was beyond anything they'd expected. Beyond anything they'd thought possible. Margaret Chen was writing frantically in her notebook, but her hands were shaking so badly the words were barely legible. Transcendent, she wrote. Generational. Best performance I've ever witnessed. The other judges weren't even pretending to judge anymore. They just sat there, mouths open, watching history happen in front of them. The music climbed higher. The arpeggios spread across more and more of the keyboard. Isaiah's hands moved so fast they were almost invisible. And then came the technical passage that separated the masters from everyone else. A series of rapid-fire scales in both hands, moving in contrary motion, building to a climax that requires perfect synchronization and impossible control. Isaiah's hands never wavered. The scales exploded from the piano like fireworks, each note crystal clear despite the blinding speed. He was playing at a level that only a handful of pianists in the world could match. And he was doing it after 15 years of not touching an instrument. After 15 years of sleeping on streets and fighting to survive. Because this wasn't about technique anymore. This was about necessity. This was about taking every ounce of pain and rage and grief and transforming it into something that could fly. The climax built, higher, louder, faster. Isaiah's face was contorted with effort and emotion. Every muscle in his body was engaged. Every breath was synchronized with the music. And then, just when it seemed like the music couldn't possibly get more intense, it did. The final section of Moonlight Sonata's third movement is transcendent. Everything that came before was building to this. Every note, every phrase, every moment of pain and beauty and rage. Isaiah's hands hammered the climactic passage, and the piano sang like it was alive. The sound filled every corner of the massive concert hall, vibrating in people's chests, making the crystal chandeliers shake. This was music at its most primal, most honest, most human. Isaiah played like he was fighting for his life, because in a way he was. This wasn't just a performance. This was redemption. This was proof that he was still here, still alive, still capable of creating beauty even after everything had been taken from him. The arpeggios cascaded faster and faster. The left hand drove forward like a heartbeat that wouldn't stop. The right hand soared above it all, defiant and fierce and unbreakable. Isaiah's hands moved from one end of the keyboard to the other in sweeping gestures. The music demanded everything, every ounce of technical skill, every reserve of emotional strength. And he gave it, all of it, holding nothing back. In the wings, Vincent Blake had tears streaming down his face. He'd spent his whole life chasing perfection, chasing victory, chasing the approval of critics and audiences and judges. And now, watching this man play, he realized he'd been chasing the wrong thing all along. This was what music was supposed to be. Not a competition, not a performance, not a demonstration of superiority. It was supposed to be this: raw, honest, true. The final phrases approached. The music climbed one last time to its ultimate height. Isaiah threw everything he had into these last measures. His hands blurred across the keys. His body lifted off the bench with the force of his playing. And then the final cascading run. Lightning-fast arpeggios that swept down the entire keyboard, gathering speed, gathering power, gathering every ounce of emotion into one final statement. The last three chords: fortissimo, thunderous, absolute, C-sharp minor, C-sharp minor, C-sharp minor, definitive, final, uncompromising. Isaiah's hands came down on that last chord with every ounce of strength he had left. The note rang out in the hall, massive and overwhelming and perfect. Then it began to fade, slowly, the vibrations diminishing, the sound dying away like a light going out. Isaiah's hands stayed on the keys. His head dropped forward. His whole body was shaking with exhaustion and emotion and release. The last vibration faded into silence. And for 5 eternal seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The silence was so complete, it felt like the world had stopped turning. Then someone in the back row stood up. Then someone else. Then a whole section. Then everyone. 2,000 people rose to their feet as one. And the applause that erupted was like nothing that Concert Hall had ever heard before. The standing ovation lasted for 8 minutes. People weren't just clapping. They were cheering, crying, shouting. The sound was deafening, overwhelming, a tidal wave of emotion and recognition. Isaiah sat at the piano, his head still bowed, his hands still resting on the keys. He couldn't move, could barely breathe. Everything inside him felt emptied out, scraped clean, raw. The applause kept coming. Wave after wave. People weren't sitting back down. They just kept clapping, kept standing, kept expressing the thing that words couldn't capture. Margaret Chen was on her feet, tears streaming down her face unashamedly. Next to her, the other judges looked shell-shocked. One of them, a renowned concert pianist himself, was shaking his head slowly as if he couldn't believe what he'd just witnessed. In the wings, Vincent Blake stood frozen. The smirk was long gone. His perfect composure had shattered. He looked like a man seeing the world clearly for the first time and hating what he saw in the mirror. Finally, Isaiah lifted his head. He looked out at the audience, and the expression on his face was one of pure bewilderment. Like he couldn't understand why they were applauding. Like he'd forgotten there were even people there. Slowly, shakily, he stood up. The applause somehow got even louder. Isaiah looked down at his hands. They were bleeding, leaving small drops of blood on the piano keys. He'd played so hard that he'd literally bled for this music. He took one step away from the piano, then another. His legs felt like water. And then Vincent Blake walked onto the stage. The applause faltered, confused. What was happening now, Vincent crossed the stage until he stood directly in front of Isaiah. The two men faced each other, the successful virtuoso in his perfect suit and the homeless man in his tattered coat. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then slowly, Vincent Blake dropped to his knees. The gasp that went through the audience was audible even over the dying applause. Vincent knelt on that stage in his $1,000 suit in front of 2,000 people and a dozen cameras, and he looked up at Isaiah with tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry," Vincent said, and his voice broke. "I'm so sorry. I was wrong. About everything." Isaiah stared down at him, uncomprehending. "I thought music was about being the best," Vincent continued. "About winning. About proving I was better than everyone else. But you," he gestured helplessly toward the piano, "you just showed me what it's really about. And I've wasted my entire life missing it." Isaiah's voice, when he finally spoke, was rough and quiet. "It's not about me. It was never about me." "Then who?" Vincent asked. "The people we love. The people who gave everything so we could play. That's who it's about." Isaiah's voice got stronger. "My mama worked 3 jobs so I could have a piano. My wife believed in me when I stopped believing in myself. My daughter thought I could do anything. Every note I just played, that was for them, not for me. For them." The silence in the hall was absolute. Every person there felt the weight of those words. Vincent stood up slowly. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "The prize, $100,000. This is yours," he said, holding it out. Isaiah looked at the envelope like it was a foreign object. "I didn't play for that." "I know. That's why you deserve it." Isaiah took the envelope with shaking hands. $100,000. More money than he'd seen in 15 years. Enough to get off the streets, to start over, to build something. Margaret Chen walked onto the stage, her heels clicking against the wood. She carried the trophy, a beautiful crystal and gold piece that caught the lights and threw rainbows across the stage. "Mr. Wright," she said formally, though her voice was thick with emotion. "We don't have all of your information. We don't know your full background. But I have been judging piano competitions for 30 years, and I can say without hesitation that what you just did was the finest performance I have ever witnessed." She held out the trophy. "This should be yours." Isaiah looked at it, at the gold plaque that would have Vincent's name engraved on it, at the crystal that reflected his haggard, tear-stained face. "I don't need a trophy," he said softly. "I don't need to win anything. I just needed to play. One more time. For them." "Take it anyway," Margaret said. "Please. As a reminder that you came back. That you didn't let the world break you completely." Isaiah reached out and took the trophy. It was heavier than he expected. Solid. Real. The applause started again, gentler now, but no less heartfelt. A reporter pushed forward from the press section. "Mr. Wright," Can you tell us your story, where you trained? What happened? Other reporters surged forward, cameras flashing, microphones thrust toward the stage. Isaiah looked out at them, overwhelmed. He'd been invisible for 15 years, and now everyone wanted to see him. He didn't know what to say, how to explain, where to even start. Vincent stepped forward. Give him space, please. He just gave you everything he had. Let him breathe. The reporters backed off, but only slightly. This was the story of the year. The homeless man who played like an angel. The challenger who made the champion kneel. This was going to be everywhere by morning. A young woman, maybe 25, pushed through the crowd. She had kind eyes, and she was crying. Sir Mr. Wright, I just wanted to say, my mom died last year, and I haven't been able to listen to music since because it hurt too much. But what you just did, you made it okay to hurt. You made it okay to remember. Thank you. She pressed something into his hand and disappeared back into the crowd before he could respond. Isaiah looked down. It was a business card. Sarah Mitchell, music therapist. On the back she'd written, "You healed something in me tonight. Let me help you too. Please call." More people came forward, each with a story, each with tears, each wanting to thank him for something they couldn't quite articulate. The homeless man who played like his life depended on it had touched something in all of them, had reminded them what music was supposed to do, what it was supposed to mean. Isaiah stood there holding his trophy and his envelope and his business card, surrounded by strangers who felt like family, and for the first time in 15 years, he let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward. By midnight, the story was everywhere. Twitter exploded first. Someone had live-streamed the performance, and within an hour, Isaiah Wright was trending worldwide. The video had 5 million views and counting. Homeless man plays Beethoven and destroys everyone's soul. This is what real music sounds like. I've watched this 12 times, and I'm still crying. The major news networks picked it up next. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera. The story had everything. Underdog narrative, redemption arc, a villain who learned his lesson. And at the center of it all, a man who'd lost everything and somehow found a way to transform that loss into something transcendent. But as the story spread, people started digging. Music historians, journalists, internet sleuths with too much time and access to Google. And they found something. Isaiah Wright wasn't just a homeless man who could play piano. He was a prodigy, a Juilliard graduate, a rising star who'd performed with the New York Philharmonic, and then 20 years ago he'd vanished. The music world had wondered what happened to him. Some thought he'd moved to Europe. Others assumed he'd quit music to do something more profitable. A few remembered hearing something about a family tragedy, but the details were murky. Now they knew. A music blogger found his old performance videos on YouTube. Isaiah, at 20, playing Liszt with the kind of effortless brilliance that made professional musicians weep with envy. Where has this man been? The blogger wrote. And how is it possible that he's even better now than he was then? A journalist from the New York Times dug deeper. Found the obituaries. Ruth Wright, Sarah Wright, Lily Wright. Family tragedy silences Prodigy, read the headline. But the article was respectful, compassionate. It told Isaiah's story without exploitation. The sacrifices, the losses, the 15 years of grief. By morning, Isaiah Wright was the most famous person in America. His phone, a cheap burner phone he'd bought from a bodega 2 years ago, started ringing. Agents, managers, concert halls, recording labels. Everyone wanted a piece of him. But Isaiah ignored them all. He sat in the hotel room that Vincent had paid for, looking out at the New York skyline, trying to process what had happened. The envelope sat on the bed. $100,000. The trophy on the nightstand caught the morning light. But what Isaiah kept looking at was the business card. Sarah Mitchell, music therapist. There was a knock at the door. Isaiah opened it to find Margaret Chen standing there with a folder full of papers. "Mr. Wright," she said. "I hope you don't mind. I took the liberty of doing some research." She handed him the folder. Inside were contracts, opportunities, a concert tour, a recording deal, a teaching position at Juilliard if he wanted it. "These are all legitimate offers," Margaret said. "No scams, no exploitation. I vetted each one personally. You don't have to accept any of them, but they're yours if you want them." Isaiah looked through the papers, overwhelmed. 2 days ago, he'd been sleeping in an alley. Now he was being offered the world. Why, he asked. "Why are you doing this?" Margaret smiled sadly. "Because 30 years ago, I was a young pianist who thought I could make it. I was good, but not great. And I had to make a choice between music and eating. I chose eating, got a job judging instead of playing, and I've spent every day since wondering what might have been." She gestured to the papers. "You got a second chance, Mr. Wright. A genuine, miraculous second chance. Don't waste it. Not because you owe anyone anything, but because people like you, people with that kind of gift, you're rare, and the world needs to hear what you have to say." Isaiah looked at the contracts, at the business card, at the reflection of himself in the hotel window, a man who looked like he'd been through hell, but somehow survived. "I want to do something," he said slowly, "but not for me. For people like I was. For people who lost everything and think there's no way back." "What did you have in mind? A foundation? Music therapy for people experiencing homelessness. Instruments for kids who can't afford them. Scholarships for students whose parents work 3 jobs just to survive." He looked at Margaret. "Is that crazy?" She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "Mr. Wright, after what I saw you do last night, I don't think anything is crazy." 3 months later, the Sarah and Lily Wright Foundation opened its doors in Brooklyn. The building wasn't fancy. It was an old community center that Isaiah had bought and renovated with part of his prize money, but inside it had everything. Practice rooms, donated instruments, counselors, music therapists, and teachers who understood that talent doesn't care about your zip code or your bank account. Isaiah taught classes twice a week. Not fancy technique or advanced theory, just the basics. How to read music, how to find the notes, how to pour your heart into an instrument and come out the other side a little more whole. The students were kids from the neighborhood, adults from the shelter down the street, people who'd given up on music because life got in the way, people who thought beauty was something that happened to other people. Isaiah showed them different. He'd also started performing again. Small venues at first, coffee shops, community centers, places where people came to listen, not to judge. Places where music was about connection instead of competition. But then came the call he'd been both hoping for and dreading. Carnegie Hall wanted him to perform. A full concert, solo recital, the biggest stage in American classical music. Isaiah had said yes before he could talk himself out of it. The concert was scheduled for a Friday night in March. As the date approached, Isaiah felt the old fears creeping back. What if he failed? What if the viral moment was just a fluke? What if he got on that stage and forgot everything? But then he'd go to the foundation and see a kid figure out their first chord, or watch someone who'd been living on the streets for years smile when they made music for the first time. And he'd remember why he was doing this. Not for the fame, not for the money, not to prove anything to anyone, for the same reason his mother had saved 50 cents at a time, because music had the power to save lives. And maybe if he was lucky, he could pass that gift on. The night of the Carnegie Hall concert arrived. Isaiah stood backstage, wearing a suit that fit properly for the first time in 15 years. His hands were shaking, but not from fear, from anticipation. He peeked through the curtain and saw the audience filing in. Every seat was sold out. People had paid hundreds of dollars to hear him play, but there in the front row was Vincent Blake. Isaiah had reached out to him a few weeks after the competition. They'd met for coffee, and Vincent had apologized again, more privately this time. They'd talked about music, about pressure, about the difference between playing to win and playing to connect. They'd become, if not friends exactly, then at least allies. Two men who understood what it meant to get lost and find your way back. Next to Vincent sat Margaret Chen, and next to her, Sarah Mitchell, the music therapist who'd helped Isaiah work through 15 years of grief in 3 months of intensive therapy. And scattered throughout the audience were faces Isaiah recognized. Students from his foundation, people from the shelter, the reporter who'd written the compassionate article, the blogger who'd found his old videos. A stage manager touched his arm. "Mr. Wright, 5 minutes." Isaiah nodded. He walked to the wings and looked out at the piano sitting on stage, a beautiful Steinway, waiting for him. He thought about his mother, about Sarah, about Lily, about the impossibly long journey from that old upright piano in a Chicago apartment to this moment. "I made it, Mama," he whispered. "We made it." The lights dimmed. The audience fell silent. Isaiah Wright walked onto the Carnegie Hall stage to thunderous applause. Isaiah sat at the piano and looked out at the audience. All those faces lit by the stage lights, all those people who'd come to hear him play. But he wasn't nervous anymore, because he finally understood something that had taken him 42 years and a lifetime of pain to learn. This wasn't about him. It had never been about him. Every note he played was a thank you. To his mother, who'd sacrificed everything. To Sarah and Lily, who'd loved him unconditionally. To the streets that had taught him survival. To the piano that had waited patiently for him to come back. He began to play. Not Moonlight Sonata this time. Something gentler. Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. The piece he'd heard drifting from a window when he was 7 years old. The piece that had started everything. As he played, he let himself feel it all. The grief, the joy, the loss, the hope. He didn't try to hide anything or protect himself from the pain. He just played honest and open and let the music say what words couldn't. In the audience, people listened with the kind of attention that's becoming rare in our distracted world. They weren't checking their phones or thinking about tomorrow. They were just there, present, letting themselves be moved. Because that's what Isaiah Wright had learned to do. He moved people. Not with technical perfection or virtuosic displays, but with truth, with vulnerability, with the courage to stand up in front of the world and say, "I'm broken, and that's okay. We're all broken. But we can still make something beautiful." When he finished the nocturne, he paused. Then he played 6 more pieces, each one a chapter in his story. Each one a letter to someone he loved. Each one a reminder that it's never too late to come back to the thing that saves you. The concert lasted 2 hours, and when it ended, when Isaiah played the final note, and the applause erupted like a thunderstorm, he stood and bowed and felt something he hadn't felt in 15 years. Peace. He wasn't healed. Maybe he'd never be fully healed. But he was alive. He was playing. He was honoring the people he'd lost by living the life they'd wanted for him. And sometimes that's enough. As the audience gave him a standing ovation, as photographers captured the moment for tomorrow's papers, as his students cheered from their seats, Isaiah looked up at the ceiling of Carnegie Hall and smiled. "Thank you," he whispered, too quiet for anyone else to hear. "Thank you for the piano. Thank you for the music. Thank you for the second chance. I won't waste it, I promise." And somewhere in whatever place exists beyond this one, Ruth Wright smiled. Her baby had made it after all. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that it's never too late to come back to the thing you love, then maybe take a moment today. Pick up that guitar gathering dust in your closet. Open that journal you haven't written in. Call that friend you've been meaning to reach out to. Because life is short, and talent is a gift. And the world needs more people brave enough to share their broken, beautiful hearts. Thank you for listening to Isaiah's story. And remember, you're never as lost as you think you are. The music is always there waiting for you to come back home.